Good morning, honorable guests, esteemed speakers, colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to CHK and to Harvard CHK Joint International Symposium on Global Bioethics. My name is Grace. I'm the Symposium Coordinator at CHK Center for Bioethics. Before we start, just a quick note. As you can see, we have our AV unit colleagues here with their big cameras because we would like to videotape today's symposium for showing the recordings to you afterwards. So please hope you understand why we have so many cameras here. Okay, going back to the symposium, the theme today is engaging Asian and Western perspectives. We are inviting all of us to learn, share, and collaborate across boundaries. And as we explore this theme together, let's make the most of today, sharing ideas, growing together, and forming new connections. Actually, this year is a very special one to the two organizing centers because we are celebrating our 10th anniversary. So throughout the 10 years, actually the two centers are growing beyond bioethics education and research, expanding our reach and also forming new connections across the world. And as the host center, we would like to take this moment to share a short video with you to showing the journey of CHK Center for Bioethics. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me to walk through together the journey of CHK Center for Bioethics.
I'm thrilled to commemorate the remarkable 10-year journey of the CHK Center for Bioethics. In envisioning the path ahead, I foresee a landscape where the realm of bioethics will encounter a myriad of opportunities and challenges on a global scale. The relentless march of technology, spanning from genomics to artificial intelligence, continues to revolutionize healthcare, while a pivotal notion that will undoubtedly shape the future trajectory of bioethics is the essence of humanity.
Whether we contemplate moral issues arising from the ever-changing biomedical technologies, global pandemic, or the delicate nuances of end-of-life care, bioethics serves as a crucial reminder that the human aspect must always be prioritized in our quest for enhanced health outcomes. The Center for Bioethics has been a cornerstone of the university in nurturing these vital dialogues and fostering a culture of ethical sensibility and responsibility.
Bioethics from its very beginning was a bridge. It bridges the gap between rapid advances in biomedicine and the human experience. The great benefits of science and technology do come with potential burden or even harm to people with serious illnesses. Good medical decisions should not be just technically determined by science and technology know-how. It involves deeply human values and emotions, and ethical dilemmas require thoughtful and holistic considerations.
Beginning in 2013, from the fruitful collaboration with the Hastings Center that helped us establish our center, to the development of a comprehensive undergraduate medical bioethics curriculum with Columbia University, our path has been defined by both trials and triumphs. The center has been evolving into a hub for interdisciplinary dialogue that transcends the boundaries of our initial vision.
Dr. Edgar Zhang's unwavering generosity as the primary benefactor of the center has been instrumental in transforming our aspiration into impactful, tangible initiatives. In particular, the center has served as a cornerstone in the evolution of bioethics curriculum in the Faculty of Medicine. Its impact reverberates through our medical and interprofessional education, infusing ethics contemplation into the very essence of our training for the next generation of healthcare professionals.
As I look back on the beginnings of the Center for Bioethics, supported by the Lenzen Foundation during my tenure as Vice-Chancellor and President, I'm truly delighted to witness its outstanding growth and contributions to the field of bioethics over the past decades.
Situated in Hong Kong at the crossroads of East Asian and Western cultures, the center is uniquely positioned to bridge diverse perspectives and approaches to bioethics as we live in an increasingly globalized world that demands pluralistic viewpoints to navigate complex bioethical issues. Our commitment to advancing bioethical discourse locally and globally has been exemplified through myriad educational initiatives, research endeavors, and public engagement activities, demonstrating the significance and relevance of bioethics in our daily lives.
In addition to advancing bioethics education within the Faculty of Medicine and the university, we expanded our reach to the wider community through outreach to secondary schools, community organizations, and the public through workshops and op-ed columns, promoting bioethics at the university and beyond, making bioethics more accessible and actively integrating bioethics into everyday conversations.
Apart from our current research focuses on end-of-life care, AI and emerging technologies, genetics, genomics, and reproductive ethics, as well as culture and humanities, our collaborations with esteemed institutions such as the National Academy of Medicine and the Hastings Center underscore our dedication to fostering a culture of ethical inquiry that transcends boundaries.
As we march towards our 10th anniversary in 2025, we remain staunch in our mission to play a pivotal role in engaging global communities in critical bioethical discussions and to foster a culture of ethical reflection and dialogue that propels positive changes in healthcare, technology, and beyond.
As we celebrate the achievements of the past decade, the Faculty of Medicine is unwavering in its continuous commitment to bolstering support for the Center for Bioethics.
Let us continue to champion the ethos of ethical excellence and human-centered care as we embark on this momentous journey into the future.
Join us in shaping the bioethical horizons in Hong Kong, Asia, and beyond.
Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the video. As you can see, the past 10 years of our center is shaped by support and partnership of so many across the bioethics community. Hope you enjoyed the video. Actually, it's on our website as well. So if you want to review it again, please go to our website. Okay, to officially open our symposium, it is a great honor to invite Professor Mai-har, SHAM, Pro-Vice-Chancellor and Vice President for Research of CHK to deliver welcome address. Professor SHAM, please.
Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, students, and friends. On behalf of the Chinese University of Hong Kong, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the Harvard CUHK Joint International Symposium on Global Bioethics. Today, we unite an exceptional group of partners, scholars, practitioners, students, and engaged members of our community from across the world, all committed to advancing a dialogue in the rapidly evolving field of bioethics. We meet at a time when the pace of discovery continually redefines the boundaries of what is possible. Artificial intelligence opens new frontiers. Advances in genomics and genetics deepen our insight into life. The models of care are constantly evolving. Amid such sweeping progress, we are presented not just with powerful tools, but with new possibilities, and with responsibilities to determine the ethical compass by which we lead, whom we include, and which principles will guide us forward for the benefit of all humanity. Recognizing that no single community has all the answers, we embrace diverse perspectives that reflect the richness of our global society. Now, more than ever, we need cross-border dialogues to learn from one another and navigate the complexities ahead. The partnership between CUHK and Harvard is vital at this juncture. Today, we reaffirm our joint commitment to advancing bioethics, combining our strengths to create frameworks for justice, equity, and dignity. Together, we can rise to the challenges of a changing world. Hong Kong, at the crossroads of East and West, is an ideal setting for this collaboration. This unique vantage point has shaped CUHK's approach to bioethics, one that embraces pluralism and values dialogue. It is indeed fitting that this inaugural symposium takes place here in Hong Kong and in CUHK. This year, our collaboration is underscored by a special milestone. Both our Centers for Bioethics mark a decade of fostering ethical reflection in healthcare and science. This shared anniversary is truly special. I wish to express my deepest appreciation to all who have made this event possible. Our Harvard colleagues, CUHK's dedicated colleagues, and all of you here today. Your engagement across perspectives embodies the essence of bioethics. May our discussions today inspire new understanding and reinforce partnerships. Thank you for joining us, and I wish you a fruitful symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor SHAM. We will now have the opening remarks from the delegates of the two organizing centers. Please welcome Professor Roger Cho, co-director of CUHK's Center for Bioethics, and Dr. Rebecca BRENDEL, the director of the Harvard Medical School Center for Bioethics. Please.
Okay. How are you guys this morning? Welcome. Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends from Harvard, from Hong Kong, of course, Indonesia, Japan, wow, South Korea, Malaysia, and I also know that one of my Harvard MB classmates just flew in from the Philippines. Welcome, and beyond, all the people from around the world, welcome. Thank you very much for being here with us this morning. I'm very honored to also acknowledge our guest of honor, Professor Mai-har, our center benefactor, Dr. Eka Chang. Thank you very much. The chairperson of our advisory committee, Professor T.F. Falk, who's also here with us today, and also the director, my partner in crime for this international symposium, director of the HMS Center for Bioethics, Rebecca BRENDEL. Please give a big hand to everybody here. Becca, we made it. We made it. For a little bit background for you guys. This almost couldn't happen, but this is happening right now. It's like our dreams come true, especially what's going on right now in the world. So that is why I think your presence makes this milestone gathering especially meaningful, important, and pertinent to this shifting global world order that we're witnessing right now in our world. So thank you very much for being here. This is just almost surreal. And today's gathering is more than a symposium. I think it's an understatement. It marks a milestone in the journey of CUHK Center for Bioethics, standing here with our partners from the Harvard Medical School Center for Bioethics. I reflect on how far our center has come over the past decade. And as you know, both our centers are celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. And even more on the possibilities that arise when institutions unite around a shared vision, shared humanity. As you can see from the video that we put humanities a lot of times, because we believe that even with the advent of new technologies, AI, big data, robotics, genomics and genetics, and all the emerging technologies, what is at the core is really our shared humanity. At its core, bioethics compels us to examine profound questions at the intersection of healthcare, science, and society. It prompts us to consider, for example, how we value life and dignity, what responsibilities we hold towards patients and our communities, and how we balance technological progress with compassion and justice. In this era of rapid innovation, evolving societal values, the role of bioethics, and open discussion like what we're going to have today is vital, more vital than ever. It guides clinical practice and public policy while continuously reminding us of our common humanity. Dialogue is the lifeblood of bioethics. Bioethics thrives when ideas flow across disciplines, backgrounds, and the theme of today, cultures. This spirit of exchange forms foundation of our partnership with Harvard. And today's symposium is also not just a shared event. It marks the start of a meaningful, ongoing collaboration, one that promises mutual learning and growth as we work together to address the issues shaping our lives and societies. Today, we're here to explore some of the most pressing bioethical questions of our time. How can Asian and Western perspectives enrich our understanding of bioethical challenges? In what ways do diverse cultural, religious, and philosophical traditions influence the choices that we make in care and in policy? And also, what new responsibilities arise as we engage with advances in technology and evolving social expectation? It is also especially meaningful to have these conversations here in Hong Kong, a city renowned for its meeting of cultures and ideas, where East and West intersect almost every day. The diversity in this room from Hong Kong, Asia, and the West and beyond reminds us that the most valuable insights emerge from authentic dialogue and openness. So thank you, everyone whose dedication has made this moment possible. Our friends at Harvard, our CUHK team, please give a big hand to our team. They're amazing. And each of you who are present here today, your commitment to thoughtful exchange is what continues to move the field of bioethics forward. So may I now introduce Becca BRENDEL to give your opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let me say just a couple more things to say. Distinguished leaders, guests, colleagues from around the world, friends, it is such an honor to be here. Sorry, I got more emotional. I practiced this 3 times. 10 years ago, we imagined, both of us, we imagined at our Harvard Center for Bioethics that we could develop a master's program housed in a new center for bioethics that could make a commitment both to the learning and the knowledge of bioethics, but also we had this little idea. We had this little idea and a dream that our learning could change the world. And a dream at that time that was almost unimaginable, that we could create the spaces and relationships to change ourselves, and by virtue of doing that, change each other and be a force for the good. I really want to thank Roger and the leadership of CUHK for being a huge part of making this dream become a reality as we set out together on this unique bringing together of Asian and Western perspectives in the work of bioethics, starting in no more perfect place, as Roger has said, than Hong Kong, but also continuing on over the next 10 days to Malaysia and Indonesia, bringing together our colleagues also from Japan, South Korea, and beyond. So this is really an extraordinary journey. It turns out, actually, that Roger himself has a big imagination as well. And this conference was the result, was the result of a project he and I did. I think it originally started because the extraordinary can start from very mundane considerations. I think Roger was hoping to finish his last credits of his master's degree in bioethics at a time other than 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. with a virtual course. So Roger and I started talking about what we might do as a collaborative enterprise together during his last credits of his own Master of Bioethics. And this is what came out of it. So don't be afraid to dream a little dream. But really, I want to express for a minute before we get started just the profound gratitude I have on behalf of our center, not just for the now and for this conference, but for the gifts that the work of bioethics imbues in each one of us, and I hope will continue to impart for the rest of our lives and for generations to come. So here's how I think about them in a condensed rather than expansive view, and I hope that we'll continue to expand the gifts that that bioethics brings to all of us. First, what an incredible privilege to be able to do work every day that changes the world in the direction we believe it needs to change. Second, how extraordinary to be in a field that focuses on creating the spaces and relationships to sustain this work and to sustain ourselves, especially at times like these when we need it the most. And third, perhaps a little too personal, but perhaps also relating to all of us, perhaps the greatest gift of all as a teacher is to learn more from one's students than one could ever have imagined one themselves could teach. In all of what's happening right now, as a result of that, I can say that the future is bright. Thank you all for sharing sharing in these immeasurable gifts with us today. Thank you for bringing your attention, your minds, your hearts, and your commitment to making this world a more just place as we bring together our science and our humanity in community in the work of bioethics. Thank you so much for having us.
I just have one thing to add. All the waking up at 4 a.m. is worth it. Harvard MBA program is fabulous, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. BRENDEL and Professor Zhou. Would both of you please move to the center of the stage for the next segment? Yeah, and now may I also invite another co-director of CHK Center for Bioethics to come forth, because we'll have an important moment now. Now, next we will have the signing ceremony of the certificate of collaboration between the two centers. Would the three of you please, move to the center of the stage? We have a big certificate here. Yeah. Now what they are doing will be like Oscar red carpet part. So the three of you can turn around and then sign your big name on the certificate, just one by one. Now for this one is not just a formality, it's actually a joint commitment to show that we want to have a stronger collaboration for the academic parts and also the research. Hope that we can bring a betterment for the global bioethics community. So shall we give a big round of applause to them? Congratulations, thank you very much. Okay, let's take a photo together. So yeah, the three of you and then with the certificate. Okay, please look at the camera. Shall we also give them a round of applause again? Congratulations. We are looking forward to their collaborations. Yeah, one. So please take a seat first. Yeah. Okay, get ready because now we're going to take a group photo with everybody in this hall. Your big smile, thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Thank you very much. Big round of applause to yourself. Thank you very much. Okay, let's settle down, and then it's time for us to start our real business of today. Okay, today's program is designed to explore how our collective perspective can shape the future of bioethics education, research, and ethical practice. Let us now begin our first panel session on global bioethics research. In this session, we will hear from 3 distinguished scholars whose work explores pluralism, cross-cultural care, and technological-driven challenges at the forefront of bioethics research. Our first speaker is Professor Roger Chung. His presentation is titled, What Do We Mean by Global Bioethics? The Significance of Engaging Pluralistic Perspectives. Professor Chung, please.
Hi, everyone. It's my honor to be here to give the first talk for today when Becca and I are conceiving this little baby of ours. We're thinking maybe we should start off with talking about what do we mean by global bioethics and pluralistic viewpoints that we've mentioned quite a lot of times today already. What do we mean by that? So I would like to start off with a case study that I actually learned from the Harvard MBA program, from the Foundations of Bioethics course that a lot of our fellow students have already watched, hopefully. It's a very fabulous movie, and this movie is based on an actual lie, as you can see over on the poster there. It's actually based on a lot of true stories that happen in China, in a lot of Chinese families. So this is very interesting. The English name of the movie is called The Farewell. And then in Chinese, it's actually not called The Farewell. It's called Don't Tell Her, okay? So here's the synopsis. Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't watched it. So the story goes like this. The aspiring Chinese-American writer Billy, played by Awkwafina, maintains a closer relationship with her Nai, okay, paternal grandmother, who lives in Changchun, China. After receiving a rejection letter from Guggenheim Fellowship, she discovered her parents that Nai has been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and is predicted to have only a few months left to live. Through deception and manipulation of medical test results, the diagnosis is kept a secret from Nai herself. She is instead falsely told that her recent doctor visits have only revealed benign findings. A wedding for Billy's cousin from Japan has been planned in China as an excuse to unite the family to spend what is expected to be one last time with Nai. Fearing Billy will end up exposing the lie to her grandmother, Billy's parents tell her to remain in New York City. Don't come to China. Well, but then she disobeys her parents' orders and flies to Changchun shortly after the rest of the family arrive. She assures her parents that she will not reveal the cancer diagnosis to Nai. Throughout the trip, however, she clashes with the rest of the family over their deliberate dishonesty towards her grandmother. Guilt-ridden, Billy expresses conflicted thoughts with her parents over the Chinese cultural beliefs that result in a family refusing to disclose a life-threatening disease, including the trauma of her grandfather passing away without her knowledge after they moved to the United States. One night, her uncle contends that the lie allows the family to bear or share the emotional burden of the diagnosis rather than Nai herself, a practice of collectivism or feminism that he acknowledges differs from the more individualistic values common in Western culture. Billy later learns that Nai also told a very similar lie to her own husband up until his death when he was terminally ill. Now, on the day of the wedding, both her uncle and cousin break down in tears on separate occasions, but manage to proceed through the banquet without raising Nai's suspicions. We're almost there. Billy intercepts Nai's medical test results from the hospital, talk in English to her medical doctor who happened to have studied abroad in the UK, and has the test result altered to reflect a clean bill of health, helping to maintain the lie. Now, this part is less about the medical side, but I think it's nevertheless very important. That night, Nai gives Billy a red pocket hongbao, encouraging her to spend the money as she chooses. Billy admits that she wants to stay in Changchun to spend more time with Nai, but she declines, telling her that she needs to live her own life. When Billy reveals that the fellowship rejection to her, Nai encourages Billy to keep an open mind and not get hung up on the failure. Don't be the bull endlessly ramming his horns into the corner of the room. She says that life is not about what things one does, but more so about how one goes about doing them. This is something that I would like to echo towards the end of today's talk. Billy keeps her promise to maintain the lie. okay? And that's the end of the story that I would like to share. And so here's the ethical question. What should be the ethical thing to do? What is the right thing to do, okay, for Billy and maybe for us to think about, right? So here are the morally salient features of the case. Patient's conditions: terminal lung cancer, perceived to be approaching her end of life, only a few months left to live, not seen to be suffering a lot as we see in the movie. The quality of life, I would say, is quite decent still, right? But probably deteriorating. From the patient's perspective, she actually did not know about her diagnosis, so she went along with whatever her family told her. And she was actually happy that her family all gathered in Changchun. From the family's perspective, they deliberately lied about the diagnosis, of course we know that, went so far to manipulate the medical results, and they argue, here's the argument that they used, to bear and to share the emotional burden of the diagnosis. And we can call that some kind of a principle that they hold, right? So that they're actually doing what they're doing, that is not to tell Nai her results. The doctor helped the family to conceal the truth in China. Now, from Billy's perspective, it's more conflicted, guilt-ridden. At the beginning, she felt that Nai should be told the truth, right? Because truth-telling should be something ethical, right? If we have to use a principle to kind of embody that, well, respect for autonomy. We should respect the patient's wish, according to Beecham and Chodris, Principles of Biomedical Science, Medicine. She went along with the family's decision later, though. Under family, we got to ask, is it under family or social or cultural pressure? Is it about family harmony? Or was she convinced by her family's argument of the principle that we should bear the burden together? So just to kind of depict the kind of pressure that she has and also the different levels of community that she's under. So this is Billy, right? And here's the circle of family around her, and her family is quite complicated, right? She has a migrant history, but she's also having a lot of close relationships with the family in China and the society. These are all exerting ideologies, values, and pressures on her, right? So conflicting. At the same time, she also brought over another set of moral value system that she probably learned, or basically that's her lived experience living as a migrant in America. So here are some of the ethical analysis that I would want to give you. We need to discern the level of abstraction, even when we say we are all influenced by culture or cultural taboo. What do we mean by that, right? So here is moral theories going down to ethical principles, to moral beliefs, and specific moral rules. When we say it is a rule to not tell her what her diagnosis really is in China, we are now lying at the bottom of the level of abstraction. It's very specific. Just don't tell her, right? Doesn't matter what the reason is, just don't break the bad news to her. That's a specific cultural rule. But we can move it up. What if it is a cultural belief, like, for example, believing that bad news will bring bad luck or bad consequences to the family and to Nai? We can move it up a little bit even more. The principle, the bad news will burden the patient emotionally or even physically. That is the argument that her uncle was using. What about theory? When we talk about theory, we're talking about collectivism, familism, or Confucianism, right? Things like that. So it is not uncommon at all for Chinese families to say, oh, you guys are, very Western influenced. It's all about individual autonomy. But, we are the descendants of the dragons. And, we're very Confucius that way, right? So those are theory, but, we can actually discern the level of abstraction It goes from theory to principle to belief and then to rule without us even knowing that. Right? So now I want to focus on the principle that the uncle actually used to argue why they didn't want to tell her. They didn't want to tell the bad news to Nai, right? It is a principle that they use. The bad news would burden the patient emotionally. So this is what I want to highlight, right? From the family's perspective, the Chinese culture's principle of not telling her is that actually, if you really think about it, they don't want to harm grandmother, right? So it is actually doing no harm. You can argue that there is this principle of doing no harm to her, but however, the specification here is that they are arguing not to harm Nai's general or emotional well-being versus a more Western perspective that we learn usually in medical curriculum of the 4 principles. Doing no harm actually means not to harm Nai's quality of life, physical, clinical conditions, right? According to Beecham and Childress. So both of them are talking about doing no harm to Nai, non-maleficence, but they mean different things because of different specifications, right? Same principle, different specifications from different perspectives. This is what we're witnessing here. That is why there is a conflict within Billy's mind, because she is influenced by both cultures and perspectives. And this reminds me of something that philosopher Mark Timmons has talked about. He tried to distinguish between fundamental and non-fundamental moral disagreement. The question here is this fundamental moral differences? All right, so for those of you who have taken MBE foundations, remember Mark Timmons? Sure. Now, a fundamental moral disagreement, according to Mark Timmons, between two parties is one rooted in a disagreement about the basic moral norms of the parties in questions. It is a disagreement that would persist even if both parties agreed about all of the relevant non-moral facts about the disputed issue. However, a non-fundamental moral disagreement is one rooted in a disagreement about a non-moral factual matter that is suitable for scientific investigation, one that is rationally resolvable. So, here's what I'm gonna say. The difference between Billy and her Chinese family is non-fundamental because both meant to do no harm to the grandmother. Fundamentally, there's no disagreement about the basic moral norms here. Both of them are talking about do no harm. But whether the truth-telling would harm Nai, that's different. They have different understanding of it, right? So Billy thinks that she has the right to know and probably is not gonna hurt her and she can plan ahead for the last days of her life. But from the uncle perspective, that is going to hurt her, right, emotionally. So this is a non-fundamental disagreement about a non-moral factual matter. And I'll tell you this is a good news that this is non-fundamental disagreement, right? Because such differences can be resolved by rational means. We can think about doing, for example, as scholars, empirical bioethics study to see whether people want to know and whether that is going to really harm them emotionally, right? So this is important because we're now, really what I'm trying to tell you here is perspectives matter, right? And we should try to shift away from treating theories as only foundations, okay? This is Susan Sherwin, who really inspired a lot of what I'm thinking in bioethics. If theories are foundational, okay, they would easily become a battle of the theories, okay? And this is not what we want to see, right? It would become like choosing among the different theories. Is the West better or is the East perspective better, right? In the farewell case, right, it could become this battle between the West and the East, and we don't want to see that. And it is so common in our society. Oh, you guys are, so Western, or, you're so Chinese, so traditional. It became a battle. So shifting away from treating theories as foundations, what I'm trying to say is we should treat them as perspectives, as lenses, okay? So here are all the different kinds of theories. We can take each one, I wear my glasses today because I want to show you how to do this, right? So pick one up, pick a pair up, look at the problem. You may see a different answer from another pair of lens. These are perspectives. We're not talking about, okay, you should choose this theory and stick with this theory forever and only use this theory as your only perspective. We can have different perspectives. And in bioethics, what I think is the most important is to train us to be able to use all these different lenses to look at the same problem, right? And I'm not talking about stacking all the glasses, right? Because, it's not a checkbox exercise. It's not like, oh, I have fulfilled virtual ethics and pure ethics and Buddhist ethics and Chinese ethics and principlism, then, my decision is the best. It's not like that, okay? So it's not a checkbox exercise. And then if you try it like that, you know that it's very blurry. Your vision is completely blurred out, right? So we have to take one up, put it back, and take another pair up and look at the same problem like this, right? This is true, right? According to this shape, it is square, it's a circle, it's a triangle. They're all true, but it's not, they don't represent the whole truth, is what I'm trying to say. So perspectives matter. Each perspective brings something unique and true to the picture, right? So bioethics is not about training ourselves to be the defender of a particular selected theory or school of thought, but training ourselves to be able to use these different perspectives as our tools that help us to see the picture from different angles. And that contributes to the robustness of the whole idea of pluralism. Now, I have already gotten approval from Becca to use a little bit more time just to illustrate this very important concepts of global bioethics today. So robust pluralism in bioethics, acknowledges the importance, contribution, and strengths of each of the moral accounts, whether it's West or East. They're important. They have contribution. They have strengths, but also critical of the limitations of each of them. It rejects the idea that the right answer, i.e., the moral thing to do, it's a battle between different moral accounts, because that is going to inevitably lead to obsession with coming up with the right theory, right? But it calls for acknowledgement and balancing, weighing of the different perspectives to make a considered judgment. It embraces the ideas that life and human nature are really messy and complicated, that we should hold ourselves to humility, epistemic humility, and cultural humility, that we can't always get it right. We're not God. The best we can do is to acknowledge and balance and weigh the different perspectives to come up with a considered judgment that may not be perfect. So moral residues, moral tensions still exist, whichever moral judgment we've made in these kind of situations. The focus should not be on coming up with or defending the best theory, but on making meaning out of our human experience. Global bioethics embraces robust pluralism by taking into account bioethical arguments and perspectives from different cultures around the world. So, let's go back to the Farewell case. Billy maintains the lie. Is that ethical or unethical? This could be her considered judgment after weighing out all the different perspectives that she holds. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, right? There's still moral tension and moral residue of the truth-telling is still there. But what she didn't do in the movie, she did not engage with the battle of the theories at the end, right? At the beginning, there was this conflict, but at the end, she decided not to take any moral high ground and blame her Chinese family for not telling the truth or for being immoral, like finger pointing. That demonstrates cultural and epistemic humility. she focused back on the relationship she had with her grandma, making meaning, caring. That should be the focus of bioethics. This year, I collaborated with Nancy Jecker on a paper published already. And we proposed some moral values and ritual practices for global bioethics. And we actually took the virtue of Li, 即係禮, okay, Li, from Confucianism to talk about these ritual practices and the values that we can try to train ourselves to have, right? So tolerance, mutual respect, epistemic justice, cultural humility, and civility. Because of the time, I'm not going to talk about them in detail, but if you're interested, I think this is a good paper to expand the conversation that we're having now. So remember this. I'm going to end with this slide, okay? Nai said, life is not about what things one does, but more so about how one goes about doing them, right? And I say, bioethics is not about what decision one makes, but more so about how one goes about making them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chung. Next, please welcome Dr. Reina OZEKI-HAYASHI, Assistant Professor of the Department of Biomedical Ethics and Public Policy in the University of Osaka. Dr. OZEKI-HAYASHI will present lessons from Shinmi and a cross-cultural study of decision-making in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Dr. OZEKI-HAYASHI, your turn, please.
Thank you for introducing me. Hello, everyone. I'm Reina Hayashi. I came from the University of Osaka in Japan. And first of all, I'd like to offer my sincere congratulations on 10th anniversary for the Center for Bioethics at the University of Chinese of Hong Kong. So, and also the Center for Bioethics at Harvard Medical School. So I'm truly an honor to be part of this meaningful event. And I'm especially grateful for the chance to share some of my research work with you. So by training, I'm a physician specializing in gastroenterology and palliative care. And so in 2022, I completed the Master of Bioethics program at Harvard University. So today, I'd like to share my recent lessons from my research. And the first is an ethical analysis of Japanese concept called Shinmi, a word often used to describe what is seen as compassionate or good medical care. So the second is a cross-cultural study on how physicians from Japan, US, and UK make decisions about intensive ventilation for patients with LAS. So through both of these, I hope to reflect on what East Asian perspectives might offer to global bioethics. So let's begin with a bit of background of Japanese situation. So Japan has a population of about 124 million. It's steadily declining. The average of life expectancy is 84.5 years, the highest in the world. And about 29% of the population is over 65. So we've had a universal healthcare coverage since 1961. And like many other countries, Japan faces rising healthcare costs, and the sustainability of the system is growing a huge concern. So when it comes to religion, many Japanese people identify with both Shinto and Buddhism, and religious practice tend to be very flexible. There's even a saying that people in Japan are born in Shinto, marry Christian, and die Buddhist. At the same time, Confucian values such as respect for elderly, social harmony, and family duty still strongly influence everyday life and decision-making. So the next, I would like to introduce history of bioethics in Japan. So bioethics in Japan started to develop in the 1970s, And when Japanese scholars brought back Western framework from US, and since 80s, it has been taught in medical school based on Western principles like Beecham-Childress and Johnson's four-box method. So the several cultural features influence this, and I will introduce some of them. The first, Japan is not strongly individualistic. Many patients struggle to make decisions alone. So this is sometimes linked to the idea of amae, a kind of dependency. So second, the decisions are often made with family members. So especially for older patients, it's still common for doctors to talk with the family first before delivering bad news to the patient. It's very similar to farewell. So third, there's a cultural value placed on reticence. The people may avoid stating their wishes clearly, especially if it would cause conflict or burden others. So we call them meiwaku. So in clinical settings, I often find myself working with patients who are shaped by these cultural social values. So this has made me deeply aware of the tensions that arise when Western bioethics are applied without adaptation to the Japanese context. So while studying bioethics abroad, I kept wondering, how would this idea work in Japan? Or what are we missing in our own ethical vocabulary? So through studying Western bioethics, so it made me find the word Shinmi. So it's a commonly used in Japan to describe a good doctor or good care. It's commonly, but we don't often stop to define what it really means. I did some research into how this word is used by patients and in public discussion, so on Google research. So I found that Shinmi is often described as treating the patient as if they were one's own family with emotional warmth and personal commitment. So it has two core qualities. One is familism. It's a special regard and devotion, like akin to family bonds. And the second is emotional closeness. It is affective involvement and empathy. So this stands in contrast to the idea of detached empathy, a more emotionally distant professionalism often emphasized in Western context. So I also explored the possible roots of Shinmi, that it seems to align with Confucius virtue ethics, especially the concept of ren. It also resembles values in Bushido. It's a Japanese traditional samurai code of honor, such as jin, or loyalty is a chugi. Okay. So I began to see Shinmi as a kind of virtue, one that builds trust, promotes empathy, and supports holistic care. But like any virtue, it can become problematic if taken too far. So too much emotional involvement may lead to burnout or loss of objectivity. Too little may come across as cold or uncaring. So from a virtue ethics perspective, I suggest that the ideal form of Shinmi lies in a balance between the extremes, not too distant, not too enmeshed. And then I asked myself another question. Could these cultural and ethical differences also shape how physicians in different countries respond to the same clinical situation? To explore this, I conducted a qualitative research comparing physicians' attitude towards tracheostomy invasive ventilation, TIV, in patients with ALS in Japan, the US, and the UK. I started this research at Harvard. So there are striking differences in TIV use for ALS patients. So in Japan, most 30% to 50%, 55% of patients receive TIV. It's the highest level in the world. And on the other hand, in UK or US, that from 0% to about 10% to receive the TAV. One possible reason is the ethical stance toward withdrawing versus withholding treatment. In US or UK or other Western countries, they are seen as ethically equivalent. But in Japan, withdrawing treatment, especially a ventilator, is much more controversial. So there are legal differences in the right to refuse treatment too. In US or UK, patients clearly have the right to refuse treatment, but in Japan, the right is not clearly protected, except in specific end-of-life cases. And it's debated whether ALS patients recalling TIV qualify as end stage. So to explore these issues, I conducted a semi-structured interviews using hypothetical cases. So a 29-year-old man with ALS now recalling TIV said, I want to end this fight. Enough is enough. Please let me die. This is a real case. But we show the 3 hypothetical scenarios. Case 1, with repeated discussion with healthcare professionals and parents, he receives the TAV and after say this. So, and the second case is without discussion, he received emergency TAV. And case 3 is he didn't wish TAV, but parents disagree. It's always happening in Asian country. So here's some the result of my research. Today, I will show you about the shared and different perspectives. So the shared perspectives is the decision to receive TIV for ALS patients is extremely difficult, and TIV may not necessarily be a desirable option for ALS patients. And TIV is not considered a standard treatment like eyeglasses for poor eyesight. So TIV is highly resource intensive and raises challenges that go beyond individual discussion in clinical settings. And the different perspectives, the disease status at the end of life is so different. In UK or US, most doctors said this patient at the end of life. But in Japan, it's not end of life. So we couldn't apply the guidelines for those patients. And ethical perspectives for withdrawing TIV is also different in the last figure. And how to address patient autonomy is including family is totally different in both several countries. And various perspectives of shared decision-making. So they call their decision-making process as shared decision-making, but the content is totally different. So I will show you some comments, very interesting comments from 3 countries. So for British participants said, TIV is a highly burdensome, costly, and limited medical resource. Even if a patient wishes to receive it, it may not be realistically feasible, and it may not necessarily provide the benefits the patient expects. For this reason, we do not bring it up unless the patient asks about it. So American participants said, in the US, patient autonomy is considered the most important. So although TIV is a burdensome and costly treatment, it is ultimately up to the patient to decide. So in Japan, it's totally different. We try to talk about TIV as value neutrally as possible. If we say anything negative, people might accuse us of denying the value of the lives of those who are living with TIV. So it's a kind of the Nancy Clausen case against around the hospital. So however, once TIV is started, it cannot be withdrawn. So we ask patients to promise that they will never say they want to stop it. So when we feel that TIV would clearly harm the patient, we try to emphasize the burdens of the treatment as much as possible. And if I ask them when the patient wishes to stop TIV, so in the US and UK, the participants say the same thing. So under UK law, continuing treatment against the will of the patient who does not want it is illegal. And American doctor says he does not need his parents' permission. On the other hand, in Japan, respecting his wish to withdraw TAV could cause a social scandal. Legally, it might be seen as a murder or assisted suicide. Since TAV can sustain life for years, such patients are not seen as being at the end of life, and existing guidelines doesn't apply. So his wish alone isn't enough. We also need to consider his family's view. So here is a summary of what we found. So UK participants take are part of the paternalistic approach, and American participants autonomy focused. And in Japan, balance in appearance, all options are discussed, but autonomy is limited, especially in stopping TAV and strong influence of family. So insights from both studies. So the TAV is a very burdensome treatment, not only for patient healthcare professionals and caregivers, but also highly resource intensive. This raises a critical ethical challenge, how to balance individual and public interest. And overemphasis on respecting patient autonomy from an individualistic perspective may result in insufficient engagement even when support is needed. And in complex cases like Asian, so alternative approaches may be needed to avoid extremes and pursue ethical balance beyond traditional doctor-patient models. It's impressed, but we published a new paper about the doctor seeking the mean model based on Confucianism. So it's a kind of alternative and improves the doctor-patient relationship. And physicians virtue like Shinmi may help build more balanced doctor-patient relationship. So it's a conclusions, and understanding of cultural and social context is essential for addressing today's complex ethical issues. And cross-cultural comparison may offer valuable insights into these challenges and new perspectives on local norms. And I hope to contribute by bridging Western and Eastern Asian ethics and drawing on the strengths of both traditions to respond to today's complex challenges in medical practice. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. OZEKI-HAYASHI. Now, may we invite our third speaker, Dr. Rebecca BRENDEL. Her topic is Bioethics Research in the Era of AI and Big Data, a Shifting World Order. Will we welcome Dr. BRENDEL again, please?
Okay, so we've made a little bit of an executive decision that I'm going to use this opportunity to say a little bit about where I think we're going in global bioethics and maybe bring a little bit together of both what Roger and Reina have talked about instead of doing a deep dive, and hopefully also bring us a little bit closer back to where we were in terms of our timing. So when we were thinking about the topics for this symposium, we wanted to bring in this notion that global bioethics is an important concept because it can help us and help us do better work in the challenges that we're facing and the innovation that is ahead. So in coming to big data and AI, we use this really as a case example because of the potential of both to advance health and healthcare, but not just healthcare, right? Further than that. And perhaps this kind of innovation could make changes for those who need it the most, right? So in some of the ways that it can both help us understand our environment, but it can also help us extend health and access to health care beyond places where physicians and other care providers can actually reach them. But the natural course of history in this, right, and so the historian Ronald Wright has done work on this, as have others, is that when we come up with new technological advances, the natural history of this is that it increases disparities rather than reduces them. Right? So this idea, when we think about innovation and equity, is that technological advances favor those who have, right? And technology, rather than making things better for everyone, actually brings us increasingly closer to our own peril, not just because of what we can do with it, but also, in particular, Wright makes a very, very strong argument. This goes back now well over a generation because of the consequences it has on our external worlds and our environments. And he calls this notion the progress trap, right? We oftentimes look at progress as good in and of itself without asking the questions about where it will lead us. And so the question we really want to ask with you today is, if we do it differently, right, how could we avoid this progress trap, and what could global bioethics contribute to that? So I want to start by saying, rather than going into a big analogy from the last perhaps major technical advance of CRISPR, really to think about this notion that if we want to know what global bioethics can do, and we want to understand what the work of bioethics can offer us, that in order to know where we're going, we should probably begin with where we've been, right? In other words, we want to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past, and we want to also recognize, right, that today's problems very likely could have been yesterday's solutions. And so how we see where we're going depends, right, not just on the stories, but on our understanding and our narrative about how we got here to the here and now and why. And so one way we can do this is looking at medical and social anthropology, but really understanding that these stories that we tell, sometimes called origin myths or stories, really can serve as a principle of social organization with a social function. Okay, so this is work by Gaines and Youngst, but others have done it as well. And we want to suggest that in understanding and appreciating how bioethics sees itself, we can learn a lot about what we can expect of the work of bioethics, and in particular, what we ought to expect and demand of a global bioethics, right? So this could have three major areas to think about. One could be an organizing function, right? How we make sense of the world around us. Another could be about our own social stability or organization, how we relate to each other. And then the third, identifying the mooring values, even when we have plurality or variability in our expression of those values, as you saw, right? Or, right, so in looking at the different views, so as Roger talked to you about with the farewell, and then as Reina talked to you about, right, in the views of physicians in different social organizational structures, right? Is it a fundamental or a non-fundamental difference? Meaning, is this a variability, a plurality, an expression of underlying values and moorings, or is it something different that should lead us to contemplate our very notions of these underlying values? All right, so Gaines and Youngst in 2008 had this really wonderful paper. I encourage you all, if you haven't read it, to go back and look at it, talking about 5 origin myths in bioethics, with the idea being, if we want to understand how to do the work of bioethics, we ought to understand the different functions and the different stories we might tell about the evolution of this field, right? And so there's 3 broad general categories. One is that bioethics is reactive. Another is that it's proactive. And the third is that bioethics can provide continuity, right? It's really about a core set of values. So what are these about? So the first one is bioethics happened because our technology made it happen. We had to do something about either the fact that all of a sudden there were too many choices and we needed to figure out what to do, right? Should we do terminal invasive ventilation? Right? Before we had ventilators, we weren't asking those questions. We didn't have those problems, right? The other version of this reaction to technology is this notion that science has gone a little crazy, right? And so we've started doing things that perhaps we ought not have done. And so bioethics has to respond to that by doing something about it and creating limits. Maybe that's a policing function. Maybe that's a policing function about bad research, right? Or maybe that's some other kind of organizing function, but we have to think about it. There's this other story about bioethics, is that left to our own devices, we get some pretty crazy ideas, right? And so we reject our first principles because maybe they're too limiting, or maybe we're not being responsive enough to pluralism and different ideas. But maybe too, that gets so expansive that we lose our footing. And so we need to think about new ways of making decisions that can bring into account and bring to bear different views, but doesn't limit us, right, within a frame. The third is really a very positive looking way. So when we start thinking about work in bioethics, conceiving of bioethics as social justice, for example, bioethics might be seen as a proactive social movement, right? So by centering those who are excluded, by looking at what we've missed, right? By making the invisible visible, in the words of Iris Marion Young, then we can address systemic justice issues and issues of injustice. Another view of how bioethics is really a proactive enterprise is this notion about bioethics anticipating a social future, right? If we live in a world of progress and there's always something new over the horizon, then if we want to be relevant, we ought to be horizon scanners, right? If we want to predict the future, right, we have to be foxes. We always have to be looking for what's out there, right? We can't just be these detail-focused, right, thinkers who are getting so into the weeds, right, that we have expertise, but that expertise is not always relevant to what's coming ahead. And so this idea is that if we're scanning the horizon and we're looking to progress, we can focus on prevention, focus on what's coming, anticipate it, and in that way, right, advance the human condition. And then lastly, another version of a story, an origin story about bioethics, is that really what bioethics needs to do is reground us in the clinical traditions, right, that made the healing professions great and important and relevant in the first place. We already know, right, from what Reina just told us, right, that this is could be seen as an overly simplified notion, because if we think that Hippocrates had it all figured out, for example, right, we now know that Hippocrates was, of course, not just one person, right, and there are many, many Hippocratic oaths, and many oaths that we've changed for many reasons moving forward, right? But this notion that we ought to start with the central and core values, I think that this, what should just say, is really is something that we're going to have to be thinking about a lot, right? We sometimes say that our technology won't change our values, right? If our values and our moorings remain true and grounding, then we don't have to worry that we might be led astray. But there's no way that we could possibly go along with that, because we already know from at least the first two origin stories, if not the second two, that we're very easily led astray. Okay. So what does this mean for all of us, and how do we bring this all together? Well, our stories have implications, right? So I want to suggest that not just one of these origin stories is real or true. The notion that they're myths is that they're quite typified, right, of one aspect of what bioethics is and the work of bioethics can do. But that if we're going to be serious about engaging global perspectives and global work, right, that can stand the test of time, that can lead us to not just react, right, and not just to proact, but to identify what ought to moor us as well, that we have a set of virtues and postures that are varying and complementary, right? So thinking about our expertise and our independence, our ability for discernment, right? Seeking moral courage, moral imagination, right? And fidelity and integrity. So where does this all leave us? Well, the future is here, right? There are both risks of haste in bringing up models of big data, right? Bringing computers, bringing augmented intelligence into the mix, but there's also very much a risk of delay
on the global scale. So there's no question that we need to be proactive too, right? Once something is possible, it's too late. We do need, in many ways, to be scanning the horizon with the clarity both about the aims of what it is that we want to do and the possibilities of what we can do. I want to point out, though, that these multiple origin stories could lead us to siloing, right? So one of the important points that Gaines and Youngs make is that in the field of bioethics, there is this siloing, and there are these different places where people end up talking past themselves because we're having fundamentally different conversations, right? So what we need to do is not be exclusive in where we're doing this work, right? But to bring together multiple stories. These are all typified, the 5 that we talked about. We could come up with many other subtypes. We could come up with additional origin stories. We could think about sub-threads and narrative threads. But as we weave this exciting and nuanced tapestry of what the work of bioethics means, right? All of these different narratives, all of our experience can provide possibility for inspiring our imagination and our capacity for moral leadership. I want to end by saying that we can transcend this progress trap. We could make this next, we could take this next crucible, right, of what we will do with the capacity to harness data at orders of magnitude, incomprehensible orders of magnitude greater than what the human brain can do itself, right? We can do that, and we can do that and bend the arc towards our shared humanity and our common good and flourishing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. BRENDEL. So now, let's get ready for the panel discussion. May I invite the 3 speakers of this panel to return to the stage. Next, I will also welcome our moderator of this session, Dr. Hajung Lee, Associate Professor of Religion and Spirituality and Society and Bioethics, University of Puget Sound, to lead the discussion. Dr. Lee, the floor is yours.
I want to make these remarks before we go to the panel session. I was the first applicant for the MBE program because I wanted to study bioethics so badly. I was in PhD program at Boston University in religion and society, social ethics, and I wanted to integrate bioethics and religion so badly. And I went to the conference, ASBH conference in the States, and they told me that they may launch the program. So I was clicking on the website, like when they're gonna upload the application every day.
2015, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So since October, I was like clicking on it like every day. And then finally they uploaded the application. I was super excited, stay up all night to write the whole application, personal statement, everything, and I submitted. And I got the admission first time for MBE program. So back then it was small program, like 22, 23 classmates. And it was an amazing educational experience actually. And I really want to thank you, Dr. BRENDEL. If we talk about virtue ethics, like when I teach virtue ethics, I ask my students, who's your role model? Who do you want to like imitate to shape your character? And I would say as a professor and teacher of bioethics, I would say Dr. BRENDEL.
Wow. Okay.
She was very supportive for like every student and caring for every student. So when my capstone was like collapsing, she supported me and she's like, oh, I'm here, I'm gonna support you, and found a new mentor, and if we don't find anyone, I'll be your mentor. And she gave me emotional support, very courage, and I was very touched by like how she mentors students and care for students. So I'm trying to imitate a little bit like in my school, like how I can support my students and how can we make like trickle effects when we try to raise better bioethicists in the future. So I really deeply want to thank you for like all of the things that you have done as a mentor. So I'm I feel really honored to be here, and it's truly amazing to see like what this center has been for 10 years, and at Harvard 10 years, and
you know how virtual ethics actually work, right? So it's one of the major moral theories. You can trace it back to Aristotle. And the way that it works is you have to imagine a hypothetical moral agent making a decision and what that person is going to make, how is he going to make that decision? So it's kind of like, for those of you growing up at church, what would Jesus do in this situation? Or what would the great Buddha do in this situation? So what Hajung was actually saying is, what would Rebecca BRENDEL do in this situation? So that's how virtual ethics actually work, yeah.
Thank you for the explanation. So I want to ask you to ask questions among yourselves. So when you hear other speakers, did you find some questions and comments and related to your talk? Anyone among panels first?
So comment on each other.
Yes, if you have any questions or comments to each other.
Let me first start. So I really enjoyed both talks, of course, and I also learned a lot from Reina's talk today about Shinmi. I'm just wondering if, when you guys are talking about really medical care, would people really proactively think about the theory of Shinmi, or it is so embedded in the Japanese culture? And I think my question is, how did you end up highlighting Shinmi as an overarching moral theory to kind of frame how you understand decision making in Japan? So how did what's the origin story in your talk?
Thanks so much for asking. Actually, I was Shinmi doctor.
Okay.
In
What does that mean?
Clinical setting. So I was too much involved in the patient. Very
too
emotionally.
much involved. Okay.
So
Oh.
I was going to burn out.
Mm.
So why I want to be a good doctor, but I become burnout. So
yeah.
I wonder why it happens. So I investigated the Shinmi, because it's a very common word in Japan. So
right.
We call the Shinmi doctor or Shinmi hospital. So it's a very famous and very common word. So we don't think about deeply.
Okay.
Very, very common.
Okay.
But if I want to be a Shinmi doctor, I won't be a too much Shinmi is make me burn out. So that's why the reason why I investigated this concept.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So is there any non-Shinmi doctors and non-Shinmi hospitals and clinics in
so
Japan?
they avoid the burnouts.
Okay.
So be more distant from the patient or more business-like. Or
okay.
Cool.
Sounds familiar.
Caring.
Yeah. Well, that's
why. Yeah.
Okay.
And any other questions or comments?
Where you started us out, Roger,
yeah.
you were talking about the ways in which we think about, are we talking about specification of values, or are we talking about fundamental moral differences? And what was interesting to me, Reina, in some of the data that you presented from the different cultural contexts was this notion that if you were to take the typical American view and what the doctor says of what the patient wants, right, which is the patient has to be the decision maker, has to have the information. If it doesn't take that long being in practice, it's when you actually earn your stripes as a clinician, when you know exactly what I'm going to say. When the patient says to you, not like, tell me about the risks and benefits, but I don't really care about all that stuff. If it was your mother, if it was your family member, what would you do? And I wonder if you coming from the other side of this, that we actually tell ourselves stories, or we maybe culturally appropriate to justify some of the kinds of decisions or things that we do. Maybe it's to avoid burnout. Maybe it's to follow some norm of practice that we think is right. But in looking at your data, if you saw any blending of that, if you saw on the one hand a certain set of justifications that were actually quite different from our fundamental moral, human, and emotional commitments, as opposed to a rational explanation giving.
Thank you so much. So that's why I investigated the Shinmi through the lens of virtue ethics. So I think it's a very important thing to the balance, the extreme. So is a kind of the Confucius virtue ethics? Is there like a means, balance the means?
Yeah.
So I think that it's some important clue to solve this problem through the lens of means from Confucius.
中庸.
Yeah, 中庸. Yeah.
Middle path.
Yeah. So when I investigated this Shinmi concept, so in Malaysia and Germany, the government recommends to treat the family member, the doctor's family own member. But in the US or UK, it's prohibited. But in Japan, we have no clear rules to treat the family members. So it's very interesting. So I want to investigate it. And how about Hong Kong? So treat the doctors, their own family members are prohibited or allowed?
I would refer that to Professor Falk and Dario. Is it allowed or?
No, it's not prohibited. It's not recommended.
Yeah.
Because I think you need to keep some suitable distance to be able to make good judgments on the case rather than from your emotional reactions to the cases. So it's generally not recommended.
It's not recommended, but it happens a lot.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Maybe from the audience?
From the audience, we want to
This is a question to Becker. Okay, the term progression trap is very interesting. I'm an engineer, and I have a lot of resonance with this term. Okay? I wonder, with in time like this, with all the innovations in all kind of technologies, how are you going to bring this forward to discuss these issues among the tech giants? Business reigns, okay? And often, even if you throw out to the market, okay, how would you bring this forward to allow the markets or the people, the population, to really understand the issues at hand?
That's a wonderful question. I have to confess that I became aware of this work on the progress trap because my son himself was taking a course in bioethics in college. And I said, oh, this is so interesting. Like, would you want to talk about this? And he said, sure. I said, so what are you working on right now? And he told me about this movie called Surviving Progress. That was a documentary made by Martin Scorsese that was based on the book that I cited by Ronald Wright about called A Brief History of Progress, right? And so the whole idea behind this notion was one that became fascinating to me because it never really stuck in the work of bioethics, right? The work of bioethics was always about how do we get ready, right? How do we both be reactive and proactive about the fact that progress is just going to continue to happen. So I saw all these various and distinct ideas being put together and really have begun to think about this very, very question, right? If that rather than making this bold assumption that doing more is always going to make things better for us. If we thought that were true, even in biomedicine, without thinking more broadly, we were mistaken. But certainly CRISPR, Cas9 technology, was the first thing that said to us,
actually, maybe I want to proceed with a little bit of caution, because if you do this the wrong way, the things that seem like science fiction 20 years ago, very possibly could become real, right? The dystopian nightmare. But so I think, I look forward to, as we think about a global bioethics, I think this is such an apt topic, because it's one that can really allow us to stabilize the questions that we need to ask together from a shared perspective of our humanity, if we're going to get this right. And we're kind of running out of time. So, in closing the longer than brief, but not sufficiently, maybe it could never be sufficiently deeply answered, but just beginning to scratch the surface. Ronald Wright himself put out a 15th anniversary edition in 2019 of the original book. And really what he said is, I'm not going to change anything I said previously, even though a lot of it are old examples, but it's all the same trend, right, that we haven't changed. But what he did in the foreword was talk about, am I more or less optimistic in the past 15 years about where we're going and whether we're leading to a global planetary crisis of wiping ourselves out. And I think that there were both ups and downs during those periods. If we had to take a straw poll now, I think we'd all be very, very worried about the crash course that we're on right at the moment, for lots of different reasons we could talk about, not right in this moment. But I think it's really important for us to think about that in a broader perspective, and not, one of the things that bioethics has done is become myopic about the kinds of topics that we consider really important or central to biomedical progress. And we need to be thinking much more broadly about what the bio prefix means. We all live on a shared planet that's only going to last so long if we keep doing what we're doing to it.
Thank you very much for all the 3 presentations in this panel. So I heard from your presentations, like first presentation is talking about the decision-making of family member. Second is about physicians' decision-making. Then both of them mentioned how to create meaning or make meaning, right? So by including a lot of different perspectives. So what I'm interested in, we are all talking about individual decision-making, how they apply their ethical principles. But we also noticed a lot of family members are involved in this, and also other multiple stakeholders involved in decision-making. So my question is, what are the ethical principles of interaction? And also it connects to the third presentation, because we are talking about the order, the new order of global ethics. So when different perspectives from Asian and Western encounter, then how can we integrate them and to practice the shared humanity to create meaning for all the multiple stakeholders?
Would you like to start?
Well, I think it starts where you started, right? So there is this idea, there is this very nice, I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm just gonna say, there's this very nice fantasy that if we take all these different pieces and we put them together the right way, that we're gonna come up with some kind of world, some kind of state of being, that we're gonna make better decisions, and we're gonna be much more broadly inclusive, and we're gonna right all the wrongs of humanity in the world. I hold on to that idealism, or I wouldn't do what I do.
Yeah.
But I think it will be in subsequent generations. But I think really beginning with an epistemic humility about this, that we don't actually know, but we have to do our best work together of trying to figure out how to do this. I think that's the best we can do right now, that we have to muddle through. And how do we do that? We create the terms, the conditions, and the spaces to expand our moral imaginations. Right? We come up with the broadest range of morally permissible alternatives, even if we already know that some might be better than others, but we train ourselves, right? Like when we're medical students, we come up with the broadest possible differential diagnosis, even though we know that some of them are very unlikely, because it's a matter of practice, right? And it's a matter of cultivation of our
of our own morality and our own skills and our own ways of being. That's the best answer I can give, but it might sound good, but if you actually had to apply it, I think it would be very hard to figure out exactly how to do that.
Yeah, but since you're talking about principles, right? So, as you said, as you can see, it's a level of abstraction, right? When you are talking about principles, we move it up a little bit, right? But how do you apply it to, to the cultural practice and also rules is, we have to specify it. But, when you're talking about principles, then I would, in the interest of time, I would say, you can refer to the paper that Nancy Jecker and I wrote. We list out some of those principles that are very important, including humility, cultural and epistemic humility, and also tolerance and respect for each other. I think that those are paramount if we want to do good works in bioethics. Yeah.
So it's a very interesting but important but very huge question. So I have no ideal answer to you, but I have a clue, or if I would say as a Japanese, we live together the multiple religion because we are born in Shinto and marry Christian and die Buddhist. So we Japanese will contribute to organize or pick some good things and contribute to the next global bioethics.
Can I add something?
Of course.
Because I was writing my dissertation on death and dying among Korean immigrants, and a lot of like Korean immigrants in the U.S., they are going through like guilt. They struggle with guilt.
Mm-hmm.
So like some people who withdraw the feeding tube and all that, they're like, I should have not done that. They feel like kind of violating filial piety. And others like who put the feeding tube and put all the life support for a while, and they saw their parent look suffering, and then they're like, oh, we should have done that. We shouldn't have done that. So like a lot of people go through like guilty feeling because filial piety is a big thing in East Asia. So, I mean, when you had the presentation, like both of you, I mean, it really echoes in my Korean culture as well. Like, it will be interesting, like sometime, like compare Chinese, Japanese, and like Korean perspectives on death and dying and other issues as well, because I see like lots of commonalities actually. It really echoes like my work as well.
Yeah, and one last bit of, because we were talking about principles, I would caution people to not over abstract principles. When we talk about principles, we have to specify the principles. What do you mean? What are the materials and contents that actually go into this principle? As I was just showing, do no harm can mean different things in different contexts. So I think that is extremely important as part of the methodology of doing good works in bioethics, and I think that that contributes to the way forward of how we do things in bioethics, and to figure out answers. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And any other questions?
Well, we're gonna have break, right? We're gonna have a break, and then we're gonna have more conversation. So don't go away. We're gonna have a break. We're gonna have some coffee and tea and some snacks outside. Grace, do you have anything to announce?
Yes. Okay. We'll now have a 15-minute break. Refreshments are available outside, and during the break, we'll also have a slideshow on screen showing the work of Harvard Medical School Center for Bioethics as well as CUHK Center for Bioethics. So please come back at 11:10 for the second panel session. Thank you.